very rich panel. Panel rich in ideas, rich in experience, and rich in creativity. Of course, they are rich in the literal term as well. They are the pioneers of their own field. Ladies and gentlemen, let me have the pleasure of introducing our panelists for a discussion on geo-enabling for IR, IoT, cloud, AI, big data, analytics, and location. Please put your hands together for Christian Hebke, President, ISPR, and Professor at Hannover University, Germany. We are living in interesting times, and we are living through a revolution, the fourth industrial revolution. With the combine of IoT, AI, big data, analytics, cloud, and location, that is bringing in, it is the age of smartphone, smart home, smart watch, smart city, and some smart people. So, because the world is fast moving from simple internet to Internet of Things, today big data plays a much bigger role in our everyday life. Today as an enterprise or individual, being intelligent is not enough. One has to be artificially intelligent. Over the next hour or so, we will discuss the fourth industrial revolution that is changing the way we live, think, and decide. The panel discussion will be followed by a Q&A session. We'll also have a live audience poll, which you may like to take using the Geospatial app, which you must have downloaded on your mobile phone by now. May I now request our panel members, beginning with Christian, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for having me on this panel. I thought rather than putting out claims or something, I'll just look at what the issues are which actually come into play here. I'll have 3 points. One is, of course, the stakeholders and their role, and of course, at each time, the changes associated with these developments we've witnessed over the last, say, decade. When it comes to mapping, to the geospatial world, the traditional stakeholders, of course, the national mapping agencies. So one of the questions is, what are they now? What have they been before? Or more important, maybe, what are they tomorrow? Then there's the private sector. There's, of course, the traditional private sector, companies which support this meeting. You see their logos there. But there's, of course, more than that. There is the newer, if you like, the ICT private sector. Names like Google or Amazon or Alibaba or, of course, the database people, Oracle. The hardware people, which we know when you mention artificial intelligence and deep learning. Everything is working on GPUs now. Most of them are from a company, NVIDIA. So these are in the market now. A third and getting more important, a third stakeholder is, of course, the citizen. Think about crowdsourcing, think about participation. I'd like to see that science has a role here, and that's, of course, I'm a university guy, so I may be biased, but with that speed of development, in order to make sure that things go right and go into the right direction, I think science has actually a more important role than it did before. The international group, not to be forgotten, things do not happen on an island, but they are interconnected. So bodies such as UNGGIM, or again, being a little biased, science organizations like ISPRS have a much more important role today as they did before. The second point is about bringing data together, integrating them, where of course location is key, because that is like the reference of all these data. They are put together in one place, and if that is not accurate enough for that given application, it's not going to work. And associated with integration, of course, you have standards. It's one thing to print things on a paper map, and it's completely different to integrate them in a digital domain and then start asking queries in some automated way. And I guess automation is the third item I'd like to mention, because with the sheer amount of data, and here I'm thinking about remote sensing as an example, but really I'm thinking about big data, automation is the only way to go. And that, of course, does touch what I mentioned before, artificial intelligence, deep learning, whatever ways in detail you want to go down that route. I think these are emerging issues which I'd like to mention in this opening statement, and we'll see how far we can elaborate on them in this discussion. Thanks very much.
Amit?
My first experience of GIS was my first year of college, engineering college, and back then we had these Silicon Graphics workstation and HP workstations, and you had ArcInfo and MapInfo softwares. And back then the work was taking paper maps and digitizing them, and actually then importing them as layers into this software. That was the cutting edge technology back then. And the panel before us, it was amazing to hear what a totally different set of challenges the industry is facing now and how far the industry has come. Talking specifically about our background, we are a company focused on commercial drone operations, whether that's standard small UAS or urban air mobility, where you're talking about air taxis and stuff like that. And how do we handle with the data aspects of it? Because drones at the end of the day is just a means. It's not about the drone, that's just a piece of hardware. It's how do you collect the data, manage the data, make the data actionable and integrate it into an existing business process of an enterprise and make it easy and seamless for the end user. We are headquartered in Washington, DC, and we have an office here in Delhi as well. We are introducing our technologies to the Southeast Asian market. It's a very nascent space. We are in our third year right now. We happen to be working with the likes of NASA and FAA in the US. Our platforms are used there, and a lot of commercial entities across North America, Europe, and now in the Indian market as well. So what our platform, in terms of platform, our platforms handle, we call it the 3 pillars. I know the report earlier was talking about 5 pillars. We have 3 pillars. We talk about the data management, the mission management, and traffic management. Those are the 3 key pillars that you have to handle when you talk about the next generation IoT, whether it's drones, whether it's flying taxis, ground-based robots, or the likes. How do you handle plan the mission so you have the optimum set of data collected? How do you analyze the data? And each vertical that the technology is applied to doesn't have the same machine learning or analytics requirements. They vary significantly. An inspection, an analytics process that I would run, or machine learning I would run for an inspection would be totally different than an agriculture analytics. So how do you take in different data sets, and how do you have, and I know AI and machine learning is a big buzzword. I just came from CES in Vegas, and everywhere you saw people talking about AI and all these buzzwords, but at the end of the day, that's a known, proven technology. But what matters is what kind of data sets do you have? Do you have valid enough training data sets that can train your data to create actionable results and deliver to the enterprise? And the third pillar I was talking about was what we call the traffic management. How do you safely integrate all these flying IoT sensors or air taxis into the national airspace so they don't go bumping into airliners or going into, if you have an Amazon Prime Air package delivery happening at the same time when you have I'm inspecting a cell tower. How do you do that? So that's part of what our platform does as well. I'll stop that. I can keep talking. This is my passion. Like, my background is aviation, communications, and robotics, so I can talk about this all day long, but I'm not going to derail the conversation here.
Vishal?
Thank you, Santanu. Just to set the context of my conversation, let me reflect very quickly on the 3 decades that I have spent in this industry. Now, we all are talking about the 4th revolution, And yet, within the technology space, we've seen about 3 revolutions at least that I've personally witnessed. And in each of these 3 revolutions that we have seen, it's much easier to understand it in hindsight, but that's not always been the case initially when they were emerging. So when I started my career, it was all about the PC era. And not many people understood the PC era initially, but in final analysis, the PC era was simply what Microsoft did to bring retail software. At that time, it wasn't as if the applications were not being written, software was not being made, but the fact that you could go shop a software, bring it onto your computer, and make it run became a magic. And the computing, because of the open source of the CPU, allowed a lot of innovation to happen. And these 2 combinations allowed about 1 billion people to enjoy computing on their desktops or laptops. And soon after that, we saw mobility coming into our play. And again, the question was, did everybody really understand it? And the work with companies like Qualcomm did to bring internet into your pockets and the joy of getting applications that help us to interface is much better understood today than it was when it was really starting off. And today, which is around 2016-17, which has just got concluded, and as we walk into 2018, we're talking about another revolution. And yes, Sanjay did say that he was at CES. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. All of us in this room know that for the last 70 years, we've been talking about artificial intelligence. So what is different that took place now that we're talking about this tendency, this whole slope that's taking place towards AI? And in my mind, it is about the breakthrough where the software can write software today. The fact that machines can learn. The fact that we have this enormous amount of data that can be ingested, and by itself the machines can learn. And more importantly, they can help you to interact. More importantly, they can help you to predict. And more importantly, they can give you an advice what we should be doing. So this breakthrough in AI, which happened, what we are often referring to as deep learning, which worked on the value proposition of enormous data and really good computational power that could be afforded, that coming together has started the new era of artificial intelligence. And in my mind, and what people are witnessing, we are able to now solve the unsolvable. We're able to solve the unsolvable in the areas of image, in the areas of speech, text, and video. And we'll talk a lot more about it, but I said, let me just set the context that that's where the technology is, that's where it's helping us to talk about the new change that we are doing it. They are nayers and they are sayers, and we're going to talk about all of that, and hopefully that will set our context.
Over to you, Jim.
Okay. So I think I would also like to thank Sanjay and the organizers. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to be here, and I really appreciate being able to share with you and learn from you. You know, for as long as there has been a geospatial information industry, it's always been based on the technologies of the era. We heard a little bit of that. Amit was referring to that a little bit earlier. That these are the, and we've been talking a little bit about, you know, this is a revolutionary time and a disruptive time. And, you know, we've gone through these cycles, and each time we look at how geospatial technologies can influence and change the underlying infrastructure, but equally how the new building blocks, the things we're talking about is the fourth industrial revolution, the cloud, big data, machine learning, or artificial intelligence, influence the platform that the geospatial industry has to use to deliver new and innovative technologies to the market. So that's very much been the way that Oracle has been engaged and involved in this industry. It was interesting to hear Christian say, Oracle, a database vendor, because obviously we are proud to be a database provider, but we've been a platform technology provider at a very broad level for the past multiple decades. And when we look at geospatial technologies, we always look at how they can be used to advance all of the application areas and platform technologies, whether it's Internet of Things or advanced analytics or business intelligence or machine learning, which is actually a very interesting area, how both machine learning can be applied to geospatial problems, but also how geospatial analysis can provide additional context that can be used in machine learning algorithms. So we really look at it very broadly, and we see this fourth industrial revolution, which I don't think is hyperbole. I think that is a true statement. I've been through a number of these significant transitions in technology in my career, and I expect this is probably the last one I will be involved in, and after that I'll go find a beach somewhere. But this one is incredibly significant. The cloud and the impact of the cloud is as dramatic as the internet revolution was. And the changes that will have to the human resources, the privacy issues, the ability for the compute power available, the elasticity available to people, cannot be understated. And we're just at the very, very, very beginning of this. This is, probably we're at the 10 to 15% usage, and I think within 5 years, everything will be cloud. So you can't understate the dramatic changes that these building blocks, these fourth industrial revolution building blocks, are going to have on the landscape as we move forward. So, as we look at these, I kind of see two challenges, and they essentially follow the same game plan, which is how to exploit these new fourth industrial revolution platform technologies to the benefit of geospatial applications. And more often than not, the challenge is how to consume and incorporate geospatial technology that already exists into these big data, IoT, and cloud environments and machine learning environments. And in the earlier session, Prashant talked about his nightmare that the investment that was going to go into this space was going to be toward reinventing the wheel. And we kind of share that as well. There's a tremendous wealth of technology, and the thing I see over and over again is it's much harder for people to consume in a mainstream fashion the technologies and innovations that have come out of the geospatial community than it is for us to produce them. So I think that's going to be a huge challenge for us as we go forward.
Thanks, Jim. Now, as a journalist, I often use or get to hear cliches like "world on your fingertips," "world is just a click away." And yes, the world is shrinking in many ways, but it is expanding too. The Earth's population was estimated to have reached 7.6 billion as of December 2017. The UN estimates it will further increase to 11.8 billion by the year 2100. And I have a question for our drone man, Amit. That the vehicular population is estimated to touch some 2 billion by 2035. And amid all these, the private sector is busy collecting and collating data and putting them on cloud. Can we have a scenario wherein the private guys and the government put their heads together and find out ways to leverage the benefits of 4IR, geospatial, and location technologies to revolutionize the traffic management and act better post a disaster. Can the private entities and the governments work hand in hand?
Yes, the short answer is yes, and I can give real-world examples for that. So, if you look at a broader paradigm here, when we talk about collaboration, so the drone space, and that's specifically where we work, so I'm going to use that as an example. But this applies to any new technology. Where, if you look 20 years back where commercial internet was, the drone technology, drone industry is a nascent industry. It's the same place where commercial internet was 20 years ago. And if you look back 50, 60, 70 years, when, or maybe that I'm understating here, when the cars first came out, you did not have roads, you did not have traffic lights. There were no rules of the road. The drone industry, the IoT is in the same paradigm right now. So there are no highways in the sky right now. There are no rules. So it is necessary at this point, and it's happening in different parts of the world. It's happening at different paces, at different pace. But there is collaboration needed between industry and the government side. So if you take an example, I'll take the example of US. So traditionally, air traffic, when most of you flew in here commercially, you didn't have to worry about your airliner bumping into anything because there's something called air traffic management that's handling that and deconflicting the traffic. Now, as you move from a few thousand aircraft to hundreds and millions of these drones in the sky, having that centralized air traffic management doesn't work. So in that case, a new paradigm called the UAS traffic management is being looked at, which takes in geospatial data, terrain data, weather, performance, all kinds of data. And I'm not going to go into the details here, but the point is, as opposed to one centralized federated, it's going to be a deregulated, multiple small private industry, like commercial entities, managing and regulating traffic in different areas, and all these entities sharing and collaborating the data so you can deconflict the data. The example I was talking about earlier, Amazon Prime Air versus an inspection. So if I'm regulating traffic here and Christian is another entity that's regulating traffic in an area and our operation is supposed to be intersect. So we have to deconflict and work, and if there's an anomaly and something is going to impact the Hyderabad airport, I have to go and inform the public or the government undertaking. So these kind of discussions and architectures and frameworks are being put in collaboration between industry and the government side. Like in Europe, there's work going on as part of a program called CSER. In US, there's a program going on along with NASA and FAA and the like. So the short answer is yes, that's happening. And right now, the scale is smaller, but down the line, it's not just going to be package delivery and stuff. You're going to have air taxis, like unmanned air taxis, Uber drones, right? So you'll call an Uber drone, it's going to come at your doorstep. And I don't want anyone to freak out. It's not going to happen today, but it's down the line. So at that point, the privacy issues, the security issues, the policy issues, they all have to, that's not just something that government or the industry, it has to be a combination.
Your short answer was yes.
Yes, I gave a long-winded answer, sorry.
Private and government can work
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Are they working together?
Yes, they are. Like I gave you an example. In Europe, that's happening. In North America, that's happening. The Indian industry is still very nascent, so it hasn't picked up right now there. But yes, it's happening in other parts of the world.
And what your experience has been in India?
I have to be politically correct. It's different, and I think things are changing. We opened our office here a little over a year ago to see how this market would react. And it's moving very slowly, and there are a lot of other issues. And I was discussing with someone earlier, I think we were talking about, it's the mindset, who is the stakeholders you're talking to. So we have had discussions in this country in different groups, stakeholders on the public sector side. So if, there are certain people who are forward-thinking, I'm trying to put it in the right perspective, that are leaning forward and forward-thinking, and certain that are set in their mindset and are not willing to change. For this industry and overall the IoT and 4IR to take place, you need forward-thinking people who are willing to take a chance and think forward to be in the stakeholder position. And I think that transition in India is going a lot slower than it should, but it's going to get there eventually.
Thank you. So geospatial and location technologies, say along with AI, cloud, big data, IoT, etc., are no longer constrained to academic papers and theoretical discussions. This combine is almost deciding the way we live. So much so that cars can be run without a driver. And we have Vishal with us, and his company is doing great work in terms of getting us autonomous cars. So my question to you will be slightly different. It will not be about cars. It will not be about running a car. It will be running a company. So even as this disruption is creating new opportunities, questions are being raised about the feasibility of the startup system, whether startups are burning too much of cash as and when they get it. Do you think that that there should be something more that could be done to open up different streams for revenue?
Okay, so let me again try and set the context. For some good reason, he said we are in a business of cars. We are actually in a business of enabling artificial intelligence, and it just so happens that autonomous vehicles that we are talking about, in that the cars are the ones which a lot of us are talking about and experiencing it. Now, it's about a $10 trillion market out there, and it's not about the cars by itself. It's everything to do with vehicles and what all are the opportunities within that. Now, I come from a city called Bangalore, often now known as the traffic-based appointments. What does it really mean? So normally if somebody tells you that, hey, let's meet, you tell them before lunch or after lunch. You don't say what time of the day. And the main reason behind that is that Bangalore, for people who had experienced it in 80s and 90s, was classified as possibly the most planned city. Kempegowda had planned the city so beautifully that you could almost reach any spot within between 12 to 14 minutes. And for a very long period of time, it served the need. But the city grew from 1 million to about 10 million in a space of 10 to 12 years. No government, no citizen had an idea how to manage this enormous growth that took place, leave alone poor Kempegowda who had thought that even if the city was to grow, how to manage the traffic. So traffic management, when compounded with all the opportunity that web has provided, where you are trying to now figure out how logistics needs to reach, require humongous supercomputing type of solutions. If we're going to continue working on the vehicles, autonomous, like drones that Amit just spoke about, is a great possibility that we will use the same technology. After all, batteries will be left down and you can fly in the wings and you can converse there and you require rules and regulation, etc., etc. Coming specifically to the startups, based on people's domain, based on people's pain points, there are many, many ideas that we come up, and each of us, especially in India, believe that if we have a technology idea, we can solve this problem instantly. And often the technology guys are then trying to solve this problem, thinking that I know the need, I have a technology solution for it, and the world should buy. And the moment they come to that decision, they find more often than not that they're not succeeding, because what they haven't figured out, that what's the business implication of that. And therefore, I think the first thing is that how business, technology, and need can be put together to come up with something that's more feasible. Having said that, in the world of today, where data is humongous, even if you look at the geospatial data, it's so humongous, that trove of data, if you have to make insight into it, you require really supercomputing environments. Now, cloud is going to serve you that. You can go and rent a cloud or a supercomputer to solve your problem. But at the same time, it's not that easy for a startup to do it because it costs money, and especially when you are doing trials, you're not able to configure what's the costing to it. And you can't just keep burning that money. You require a need where people can come together, understand the business, and also support you, a computational space where you can try out your ideas. And I think the academics is a great place to start there. If you look at from our context here in India, most academicians have had very scarce resources available to them. And what they have done is that within those scarce resources, they've tried to generate papers that could give you insights what production houses, research organizations can take it forward, but normally been left at the white papers or in journals. I think there's a great opportunity for academia to be supported by private sector and government to create bigger infrastructures in today's age where the ideas can be really tested, converted, and business houses, even as startups, can take that and work. Net, my belief is that instead of saying that, hey, I got my investment, I need to create awareness, I'm just going to go to some X number of people, spend a lot of money there, and once they have awareness, they'll start using it. It's more important if we can have a three-way, a four-way relationship, specifically in countries, so the ideas can really be brought into reality that can disrupt our world. And that's what I think most countries should do. I think that's what the government needs to come together, private segment needs to come together, and more importantly, nurture the startups.
Thank you. Jim, the computer man. So we are collecting huge data, putting them on cloud. And often there are concerns about data security. And at times we have instances of data theft, data leakage. Even recently we had one incident here in India. But my question would not be about how to secure the data. Of course, you and your company, Oracle, know the best. My question to you is, can this concern be channelized into a business opportunity? The business opportunity that lies in securing data. Yes.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's funny, I'm thinking back, and one of the first interviews I ever did, shortly after the rise of the internet, was with a local television station, and the question was, we're going to start to do commerce on the internet, and is it safer? We're going to be putting our credit card information. And I naively said, oh yeah, we have that knocked. It's solved, right? So clearly we don't. There is a world of massive amounts of resources going into trying to exploit the amount of information and the open information that we have, and that we are putting into the cloud environment. But we tend to look at it not so much as a new business opportunity and more as a stringent set of requirements and an uncompromising set of requirements for providers of cloud infrastructure, cloud platforms, and SaaS services. That said, with certain types of data, like geospatial information, which is being treated by the EU as PI, as personal information, there certainly are opportunities for obfuscation, data masking, separating the location from the individual information. But from our perspective, we really do view that as being something that's going to be a requirement of the platform vendors as much as anything. And there are a whole new set of requirements that come in with the cloud, because the economics of the cloud require multi-tenancy, right? They require remote administration. And when you're in a multi-tenant environment, you have to be very careful that my data and your data and somebody else's data that are sharing this resource cannot bleed across to one another, that one user cannot have access to the other. when you have a situation which is completely new in terms of operations. Database administrators used to be, all powerful, and they had access to everything. Now we have an environment where the people actually managing the systems do not have access to the data and cannot have access to the data, which really changes the dynamic. And it's one of the reasons that in some cases we're going to see cloud architectures at customer, because there's simply no way that there's and even in that case, there are certain elements which are remotely managed by the provider, and they have no access to the data. We started by opening up geospatial information to operational and business systems. And with that came certain privacy requirements, and with that, new encryption technologies came into place, applying encryption to geospatial information, and those are opportunities for people. And the new types of geospatial information that come in. We've brought enterprise attributes to the geospatial market: resiliency, security, scalability, extreme performance. With the cloud, there will be a whole new set of redundancy, shareability requirements that come, and each one of them, provides little opportunities for security breaches. And so we are very much aware of that. I think on the human side there are opportunities, because there's this whole concept of ethical hacking, and understanding how geospatial information plays in the environment can help people in ethical hacking as well, to take that into consideration. Geospatial information provides context. Context provides another entry point into information. And so educating the hackers to look at that dimension of the problem is a potential opportunity. So, I think that there are some opportunities, but I tend to look at it more as a requirement, as I said at the beginning, than sort of a niche opportunity.
Thank you. You could also tweet your thoughts at hashtag GWF2018, hashtag GWF2018. I come to Professor. So, Christian, there is certainly a societal and behavioral shift with AI, cloud, IoT, big data analytics, changing the way we think and act as individuals and the way business decisions are made. But more often than not, urban centers take the center stage, and rural areas are often off the map. In such a scenario, are our governments doing their bit? Should we have a better outreach program so that this fourth industrial revolution is inclusive in every possible way?
In every possible way is, of course, a big word, right? No, I guess that question can be answered at different levels. One is, all government should be doing is ensure that there is enough bandwidth. Because are people really only active in cities? Yes, some are. Some like to be in cities for many reasons other than our revolution. Because cities are great, they're interesting, etc. At the same time, it really much depends on which part of the world we're looking at. Some areas, of course, are a lot more federal. I come from a more federal one. Others are more central. So that would be one question, one answer. All you need to do is provide bandwidth, and then everything else happens, because at least some people don't want to live in these overcrowded cities and congestion, traffic jams, and you have it. Another observation would be, in many areas, at least bachelor students, and I'm now talking about students going to university, my background is bachelor students tend to want to study close to their home. And that would then mean we need to bring education to the people. rather than having a central university in some place far away, in one of these centers you were referring to. Now, what does that mean? You have to have lots of education centers, and again, it depends on the structure of the country, it depends on the development of a certain country, etc., etc. But that is certainly not something specific to GI. It's a question on educational policies, really. And it's certainly a good idea to educate people. And you could, of course, then say, okay, there is all this, we talked about bandwidth, there's all these MOOCs, these massive online courses, open online courses, so why not do all this in e-learning type strategies? And yes, it can be done to some extent, but I do believe there is a value in personal interaction when it comes to education. Again, nothing specific to what we're discussing here, but it's an education on a broader level. So give people some time to do their education, let them go to that place, provide a number of places around the area you're responsible for, and back this up, this educational program, back this up with these online possibilities. In ISPRS, we have running right now an initiative which we call Educational and Capacity Building Initiative. Seed money for projects which should serve exactly, now in the GI area, of course, exactly what I was just discussing. You were asking about governments. No, we're not government, but nevertheless, we think an international science organization should be engaged in these areas as well. And of course, finally, education should be free. And I think that is actually a very important point in getting it out there, spreading education to the masses, spreading it to those areas which are a little less privileged in some aspects, maybe.
Do you think that outreach program happening around the world? Engagement with?
Well, it's happening very differently in very different parts of the world. We would need to look at the policies of different countries with respect to education. I don't know the area of India well enough to really comment on that, but the difference in student fees between, say, the United States and Germany is, shall I say, visible. We have free education, and we've actually opened up English-speaking courses in GI at our university now, because we believe that we'd like to see the best minds, regardless of a language barrier. And I can tell you German is a complicated language, so we'd like to overcome those barriers also in education.
Thank you very much.
Shantanu, just to break the pattern a little bit, so let me just kind of burst into this. So everybody in India says that this is an English-speaking country and that's how we do our business. Everybody turns around and says that there are 500 million smartphones in this country, another 500 million feature phones. And yet, we find that if you really go deeper into it, only 1/6 of the country speaks English language. There are over 24 official languages, over 2,000 dialects, and they have no access to the internet. And language is a singular barrier to it because we're consuming everything that's coming onto the internet predominantly through English. So just to carry forward your word on awareness, with this emerging technology disruptions that we are having, where a single algorithm can solve so many language problems, if we have the right data set and if we can apply that, we can start bringing the country much closer to each other, and we can start consuming the internet, get the awareness levels, and start pushing ourselves up. So India probably would go through a very different mechanism, how we are going to adopt to the AI world with data, how governments can look at it, and what we really work on it, than most of the world will probably end up doing.
Thank you very much, Amit, Christian, Vishal, Jim. We had a very fruitful session, and to sum up, that this industry is creating new opportunities, new players coming up, new things are being done. Yes, government, private guys can work together. We have miles to go, but it is never late, and we are not late. And one more thing I think that our panelists have pointed out, that academia, government, private must create infrastructure together so that our next generation have much more than AI, big data, cloud. There should be something more. On that note, may I request you to put your hands together for our panelists for their lovely insight. Thank you very much. Good day.